Alright, Jace. Today is the day I finally present to you my deep dive into the Halo franchise. Hopefully, this is the first of many judgments for Jace. Originally, I was going to record a much lengthier intro, but ultimately decided to cut the crap and jump straight in. So, let me lay out the format for you. We will begin by discussing each individual game in the order that I played them. Next, I want to discuss some more general thoughts that don't necessarily fit in the discussion of one game or another. Then, we'll take a very brief look into Halo outside of gaming. And I mean very brief. Lastly, the big one. I will reveal, in order, my ranked list of the games. Of course, spoiler warning for all of Halo. Let's begin. Alright, so we're going to be starting with, of course, the first game in the franchise that I played, Halo Combat Evolved. A quick summary. The UNSC is fleeing Reach. The Covenant follows and forces the ship to crash land on the Halo. Chief and Cortana slowly learn more about the Halo and its requirements to fire, as well as meet the monitor of the installation who is seeking help to destroy the Flood. Chief assists 343, and just before activating the Halo is stopped by Cortana, who tells him the truth of the Halo super weapon. Chief and Cortana try to find another option, and ultimately decide they have to blow up the Halo, and that's exactly what they do. So as a whole, I felt this was a very strong start for a new franchise. For me, playing through it didn't feel all that great. Especially towards the end, I had some major gripes with the missions they had curated. I was frustrated. However, I think as proven by how much of the Halo franchise I have now experienced, the first game is an extraordinary step into the world and the lore of the Halo franchise. I'm going to start with the weaknesses of this game, in my opinion. First of all, the checkpoint system doesn't always help out. An unlucky save leads to countless deaths and respawns. You have to find a way to adjust to this, whether that's reloading a previous save or being stubborn and finding a way to push through. Yes, I am the stubborn type. The Maw. The Maw is the final mission of the game and had me fuming. During this mission, you will need several grenades or a rocket launcher. Because of this, the game tries to lead you to an armory. However, it does so very poorly. I couldn't find the armory forever. Even looking it up seemed to just result in seeing others who had been lost in the past. So I just replayed the mission so I could get the exact wording. The armory station located near the engine room's entrance. I would not have thought to leave the area to find the armory. I remember even walking out a few times, but I guess I never went quite far enough. It's just a bad call in my opinion. After successfully blowing shit up, an escape sequence begins. This was arguably worse than not being able to find the armory. It really just lacks any appeal. The escape route is way too condensed and left no real room for a quote-unquote epic escape, and just felt frustrating as I crashed my Warthog over and over and over. Halo 3's escape sequence is a massive upgrade. Now the weaponry. To me, specifically, the assault rifle. The assault rifle felt lacking in accuracy and precision. I mean, the reticle was massive. I felt like I had no control over where I was shooting, especially if there was any sort of distance. And somehow it felt like I started with the damn thing every single mission. On the other hand, the pistol or magnum, I think it never felt as good as it did here. Now let's transition to the strengths of this game. The easiest is the overall plot. The Covenant is constantly chasing Forerunner tech, which they see as religious artifacts worthy of adoration, and humanity is simply trying to survive their onslaught. Humanity is not doing well in this regard. The Covenant is an overwhelmingly powerful force, an unstoppable force, and we are unfortunately not an immovable object. This is simply interesting and enough to hook me, at least. A standout would be when Chief and 343 go to activate the Halo and are stopped by Cortana, which leads to this almost double accidental betrayal. I guess you could chalk it up to a lack of communication, since 343 assumes Chief knows what he's doing, but Chief is more or less just following him. Arguably, the biggest strength is the faction introductions. Let's start with the UNSC. The UNSC is, of course, the boring one. They're pretty standard for what you'd expect from a technologically advanced human faction. The coolest aspect, to me, is the Spartans. However, Spartans are not necessarily a unique concept. Genetically enhanced humans are pretty common after all. Low-key, I think I prefer Space Marines from Warhammer 40k over Spartans, but I'm not quite sure either aesthetically or thematically. I do like how the UNSC is introduced as the underdog in a very dire situation that mirrors the war as a whole. Now let's switch to the Covenant. The Covenant is introduced as an immense threat with the potential of annihilating humanity. An organization that grows by incorporating in more alien races regardless of their willingness. There are 8 species I recall encountering throughout the games. We have the elites. They are, well, the elite soldiers and commanders on the front line. We've got the grunts, who are basically cannon fodder and, truthfully, comic relief. We've got the jackals, which are, truthfully, these specialized soldiers in a way. They've got a few different things they tend to be, whether snipers, which is pretty straightforward. You've got the sword and board, which, they've got the energy shield on their arm. And then you've got these skirmishers, who are these like fast-paced assassin type fighters. And we've got the hunters. The hunters are easily the strongest species. They are a colony of small worm-like beings that are split into a duo. Low-key, this was a little disappointing, since I thought they were super badass at first. And we've got the prophets. These are basically the leaders of the Covenant. Then we've got the brutes, who are the muscle in a way. And we've got the drones, which are basically just flying bugs. Adds some nice variety to the Covenant. And then we've got engineers, which are more of a support unit. Each species is pretty unique, in my opinion. The Covenant was formed when the prophets and elites formed an alliance to end their endless war. The Covenant will do whatever it takes to reach the Halos and other Forerunner tech. If you've played through Halo and don't have some sort of appreciation for grunts, then I don't think we've played the same games. I believe Halo 4 and 5 somewhat ruined the designs for the grunts, but we'll ignore that. The cowardice and comic relief the grunts provide is unmatched. Running away when their elite leader dies and screaming how they don't want to die. This is even expanded on further and infinite when the grunts are given more lines. The beef between grunts and jackals always seems to make me laugh. Now we've got the Forerunners. The Forerunners are this extremely technologically advanced ancient civilization that is responsible for most, if not all, of the major tech in the Halo franchise. I mean, they built the Halo super weapons, which are fucking sick. Started as a mysterious race that we knew nothing about, which I'm all for. I have some pretty mixed feelings with the faction being further expanded on in Halo 4. That game shows how the leaders of the faction were split on the best course of action for exterminating the Flood. This led to the creation of the Prometheans, these AI soldiers that are actually created from humans. But as they are no longer flesh and blood, they are immune to the Flood. The Prometheans are also sick as fuck, in my opinion. Let's transition to the Flood. This parasitic entity that feeds on others and takes over their bodies. A hive mind led by the grave mind. They're simply a horrific race. The Flood simply wants to devour all life and are basically the driving force of most things in the series. I think their introduction was done expertly. We learn the Covenant seem wary of this area on the Halo. So the UNSC attacks, and while they're pursuing the Covenant in this area, they come across the Flood. Hell, there's even evidence that the Covenant and UNSC teamed up in this section to try and survive the Flood. Pure chaos, of course, ensues. Later, when we, as Chief, proceed to this area, the vibes when we encounter the Flood initially are straight out of a horror movie. In conclusion, while I believe Halo Combat Evolved definitely has its issues, I think it is a spectacular way to begin a new franchise. There is no doubt in my mind that the world and lore created in this game hooked me and made me want to explore the franchise further. I think there is no greater compliment than that for the first of anything in any franchise for any medium. When you are beginning something, getting your audience hooked is the most important thing, and I think Halo Combat Evolved absolutely nailed it. Next up, we've got Halo 2. Quick summary. The Arbiter is introduced. Master Chief must defend Earth from the Prophet Regret's fleet, and after successfully doing so, follows Regret through a slip space to yet another Halo. After defeating Regret, Chief faces a Covenant bombardment and falls into a lake, only to be dragged by the Grave Mind's tentacles. The Arbiter is sent to retrieve the Index, and after doing so is betrayed by Tartarus, who knocks him into a chasm, which also leads to the Grave Mind. The Grave Mind teleports Chief to High Charity, where all hell is breaking loose as he tries to stop the Prophets, eventually leading to boarding his ship to Earth and leaving Cortana behind. Arby, or the Arbiter, is sent to defeat Tartarus and stop the activation of the Halo. This success puts this Halo and all others in standby mode, waiting to be activated from the newly introduced arc. Covenant POV. The very first thing that stands out to me in Halo 2 is the addition of Covenant-focused cutscenes. I mean, obviously it's how the game starts. Experiencing the Covenant POV is extremely important to me and completely alters how I had viewed the franchise. Seeing both sides of the conflict makes everything feel more impactful. This faceless monster now has a name, ideals, feelings, etc., etc. The Covenant is no longer simply an ominous threat, as we learn more about the structure and the hierarchy of the organization. We're even introduced to more races. Next, I want to briefly talk about Arby, or the Arbiter. The Arbiter used to be a prestigious role, but now it is a punishment for a disgraced warrior who will be sent on suicidal missions. The Arbiter story unfolds alongside Master Chief's and is a brilliant change of pace for the narrative and gameplay. Halo 5, Guardians really should have paid more attention to how the Arbiter was introduced and implemented, but we'll come back to that at a later time. Let's look at the gameplay changes. From a gameplay side of things, instead of a flashlight, the Arbiter can, go invisible. I know Chief could do this as well if he found the pickup, but the fact that this is Arbiter's ability, the fact that it simply replaces the flashlight, it's such a, minor upgrade. The more impactful aspect of this character change, in my opinion, is fighting alongside a squad of other elites. Whether you're fighting heretics, brutes, or even Tartarus, having these other dominant specimen by your side feels exhilarating and is a major upgrade over the Marines by Chief's side. Now, if we look at the narrative impact, narratively, the Arbiter is a perfect lens for us to view the rest of the story from. Once again, getting that new POV makes the story feel more immersive than ever before. Through the Arbiter's eyes, I felt as if I learned more about the Covenant than I ever could have otherwise. Alright, let's talk about the main event, the big boy, the Civil War, the crumbling of the Covenant. I believe my favorite aspect of Halo 2 is simply the imploding of this alien organization, or as I have taken to calling it, the crumbling of the Covenant. In other words, the Civil War that begins to take place is just super fucking cool. With the death of one of the prophets, the abilities of the elites comes into question. Slowly but surely, the roles and responsibility of the elites are stripped from them and given to the brutes. Of course, this is not, by any means, a seamless transition. The brutes are not simply accepting these positions, they are massacring the elites. And of course, all hell breaks loose. I felt this impact so strongly towards the end of the game when, as Master Chief, we are running through High Charity. Typically, this would be a potentially insurmountable quest. However, we are not priority number one. While Chief isn't exactly welcomed, he isn't really targeted either. As we make our way through High Charity, we get a front row seat to the crumbling of the Covenant. Elites and brutes in an all-out war. The other species all caught in between. On bated breath, waiting to see which side they choose. Watching hunters appear in a room and massacre any who oppose them. This trip through High Charity, this journey through the front lines, was truly a beautiful, bloody sight to behold. Let's briefly touch on the Gravemind, as there's not a lot I want to say. Simply, I liked the implementation of the Flood's quote-unquote mastermind. The Flood is no longer just a thoughtless monster, and Loki becomes way more terrifying because of it. So, in conclusion, Halo 2 provides an exponential upgrade to the storytelling of this franchise. Halo is no longer humanity surviving against an unknown threat. We now see exactly how the Covenant operates and witness their true purpose. I, honestly, have no complaints about Halo 2, as I am story first for Halo, and the story, with the missions it provides, simply be hitting, and hitting hard. Next up, Halo 3. Summary. After abandoning High Charity on a Covenant ship bound for Earth, Master Chief is first seen abandoning said ship to crash land on Earth. After reuniting with Johnson and the Arbiter, the UNSC attempts to prevent the Covenant from activating the Forerunner artifact they have uncovered. However, they are too late, and the Prophet Truth activates the device, opening up a slip space portal which leads to the Ark. Chief and co. follow him through, and an army of elites and humans besiege the remnants of the Covenant led by Truth. Even the Flood makes its way to the Ark, crash landing the whole of High Charity. Truth captures Johnson and eventually forces him to activate all of the Halos that are currently in standby mode. The Grave Mind suggests a truce with Chief and Arby to stop the activation, and after successfully doing so, immediately betrays our boys. We then learn the Ark can also create Halos and is making a replacement for the one destroyed in the first game. Chief decides to activate this ring to destroy the Flood, but must first retrieve Cortana from High Charity. Upon reaching the control room, Guilty Spark turns on you, not wanting to prematurely activate the Halo and risk destroying it and the Ark. Chief activates the Halo and escapes to the forward until dawn with the Arbiter, but the portal is forced shut prematurely and only the front half of the ship, carrying the Arbiter, makes it back to Earth while Chief and Cortana are trapped floating through space in a damaged vessel. A memorial service is done on Earth before the Arbiter and the elites return to their home planet, while Cortana drops a distress beacon and Chief goes into cryo sleep. The gap at the beginning. So for starters, I was very confused and frustrated by the beginning of Halo 3. Why is Chief crash landing? Why don't I get to fight through the ship I entered at the end of 2? Questions like these flooded my mind. It wasn't until I beat the game and went searching on YouTube that I learned there is a 2-week gap between the games, and the events on the ship are covered in some Halo comic I don't care to remember the name of. This is still pretty disappointing to me overall, but it's not the end of the world. So big ups for Galactic Warfare. I think my biggest compliments and praises are of a more general and vague variety this time around. I simply loved the big set pieces focused all around different environments and situations. Whether fighting scarabs or witnessing just massive numbers of troops and artillery, I was in love with the overall vibes. Halo 3 simply drips aura, in my opinion. Battles on a massive scale are hard not to enjoy. Not to mention, the final Warthog escape is leaps and bounds ahead of whatever the hell we experienced in the first game. A big open area with platforms collapsing all around, leaving plenty of room to work with while still ensuring plenty of danger. Let's be a little more specific with the big set pieces that I enjoyed. Firstly, fighting through the flood-infested High Charity in order to recover Cortana. I thought I was playing a horror game based on the atmosphere present throughout this mission. Absolutely haunting. And hauntingly beautiful. Secondly, assaulting the Ark with a large-scale army against Covenant forces. Being given a Scorpion tank to just run through everything before fighting a Scarab, and even pushing through with the Flood's backing to stop Truth's plans once we were closing in on the control room. Thirdly, at the beginning of the game, slowly creeping our way through the forests until arriving back at our outpost, which itself is then besieged by Covenant forces. I really enjoyed running around our outpost, almost like a tower defense game, and experiencing different assaults from a variety of squadrons in a variety of environments. So, in conclusion, I clearly don't have a ton to say about this game. Halo 3 lives and dies by its chaotic set pieces present within basically every mission. These are the core of the game. These are what will draw you in. Halo 3 may have some inconsistencies and issues with its plot throughout, especially the comic tie-in from the start of the game, but I promise these are things you will always forget while simply overwhelmed by the gameplay experiences that are provided. Next up, Halo 3 ODST. Halo 3 ODST is set during the events of Halo 2 and the aftermath on Earth from the Covenant invasion. This time around, we play as members of an Orbital Drop Shock Trooper Unit, or ODSTs. As the ODSTs are dropping to Earth, the last remaining Covenant ship opens a slip space, causing chaos for those around, and the ODSTs end up crash landing in various conditions and locations. Rather than give the perspective of each ODST member, I want to keep this brief. Basically, each member of the ODSTs, minus Rookie, joins up with some Marines in the ground and joins the fight to repel the Covenant while slowly reuniting with one another. Rookie, on the other hand, wakes up much later and must slowly piece together what is happening while following in his squad mates' footsteps. Dare is introduced to the squad before they drop, and she is in charge of a secret operation which these ODSTs were set to assist her on. While the others are still fighting on the surface, Dare is able to resume her operation, albeit on her own. This is until the Rookie is able to find her and assist, as the top secret operation is actually a retrieval mission. Rookie and Dare begin to escort the Superintendent, a Covenant engineer who has basically absorbed the city into itself. The city AI into itself. The whole squad eventually reunites and completes the evacuation as they watch the Covenant destroy the city and evacuate some form of Forerunner artifact. Vibes, vibes, vibes. There are two things that I believe ODST does extremely well: immersion and story structure. Let's start with the latter. Up until now, the Halo games have all been very straightforward and linear. ODST twists the formula and overall provides a nice change of pace. So what is this structure? As we discussed in the summary, all members of the ODST crashed, landed in different locations and situations. We start by playing as Rookie, who is actually the last ODST member to awake from the crash. Naturally, the first thing you want to do is find your squad mates. As the Rookie, waking up way later than the rest, you will follow in their footsteps in order to find out what happened and track them down. Upon finding a certain piece of tech, you will see a little cutscene, and then you are put in control of whichever ODST member you are tracking. So, explore as the Rookie to find a clue, and then play as the ODST member during the battle. Now, most of these battles are pretty standard fare for what we're used to throughout the Halo franchise, but that's not a bad thing. Simply slaying more Covenant in different situations to help fight back against the invasion. I really enjoyed the back and forth. I think the main reason I enjoyed this back and forth story structure was because of the immersion I experienced while playing as the Rookie. You wake up 6 hours after crash landing. You're alone in a destroyed city. It's dark and crawling with danger. It truly felt like a horror game. I quickly realized the best way for me to play as the Rookie was a stealthy, non-confrontational approach. I wanted to fight as little as possible as I creeped through the streets, surrounded and outnumbered. This point was really driven home when I first tried to fight against a couple of hunters, and holy hell did I quickly realize I was not Master Chief anymore. That fight took forever, and I had to continuously disengage to survive. The immersion of being the Rookie, an ODST all alone, surrounded by enemies in the pitch black night, is not a feeling I will soon forget. I think this immersion also drives home the overwhelming might of the Spartans, and of course the Master Chief. So just some general points here. Halo 3 ODST is another example of how to create a Halo game without relying on Master Chief. Halo 5 Guardians really should have taken notes, but more on that when we get to 5. While most of the missions were standard and enjoyable, there were a few that stood out, whether positively or negatively. We'll start with the bad. Escaping on the highway at the end of the game felt like it took forever. It had a lot of potential, but quickly that faded. Now the good. Sneaking into the sewers in order to escape, only to find out it is crawling with Covenant. then proceeding to hijack banshees and phantoms in order to blast your way through. Most satisfying mission for sure. Another standout mission. There was another segment when the ODSTs first reunited and you're atop a roof, defending a location and being swarmed by countless troops. All across the roof are rocket launchers and turrets just calling out to you. The ending of this mission felt very impactful, simply based on the degree of the firepower we are given. So, in conclusion, I think ODST thrives on its immersion as seen through the eyes of the rookie, which is intertwined with its twist on story structure. The atmospheric vibes of an overran city at night were mesmerizing and will not be soon forgotten. Next, on to Halo Reach. Honestly, I don't think much needs to be said for the summary here. Basically, as Noble Team, we discover that the Covenant has located the human world Reach. The entire game is based on doing everything possible to push back the assault, which ultimately fails, and we watch the world burn. Good enough, yeah? So yet again, here we are in a situation where we do not play as Master Chief. Does the game suffer for it? Absolutely not. Halo 5, once again, I'm looking at you. Individually, I don't really have a ton to say about each character, specifically the Spartans of Noble Team, but as a comprehensive unit, I really enjoyed the overall sense of camaraderie. This was the closest thing I felt to the Star Wars Republic Commando game, which absolutely blew me away earlier this year, playing as a member of Delta Squad. There's a sense of comfort and immersion to having these other characters that you can genuinely trust to watch your back. This is something that is always missing when playing as Chief, in my opinion. Obviously, Chief has Cortana, which more or less makes up for it, but the overarching feeling remains. Being surrounded by characters of equal standing really made the world feel more alive and the emotions more impactful. Even knowing the end result of this game before playing it, knowing that Reach is glassed, knowing that most, if not all, of Noble Team will perish, the characters still found a way to fill me with hope, which I think is a great transition to my next point. Halo Reach, more than anything else, made me feel despair. I just mentioned the hope present throughout the story, and yes, it's true. However, every moment that is filled with hope is met by an overwhelming sense of despair. No matter the successes that we accomplish on the battlefield, the Covenant responds. Time and time and time and time and time again, the Covenant responds. How could I feel anything other than despair? Everything I accomplished was overshadowed. Every mission completed, every ship destroyed, every defense turret disabled, none of it mattered. Reach was lost. As I've been writing this review and reliving my thoughts and experiences, I've come to a certain conclusion. Halo Reach is simply Halo 3 where we lose. Halo Reach is the dreadful Halo 3. I don't mean in terms of story, I mean in terms of structure. Both games are filled with these massive set pieces where life and death are the only options. Life and death on a massive scale. If we succeed, we live to fight another day, but failure will be catastrophic. If Chief had failed on the Ark, the losses would far outweigh Reach, but that sense of despair, that feeling of loss would remain the same. Likewise, if we had somehow found a way to repel the Covenant invasion of Reach, the sense of victory would have been unmatched. This is still a point I'm more or less workshopping in my head. Please tell me if you see my vision. Halo Reach and Halo 3 had the greatest battles in the entire franchise. The threat of our enemies and the impact of our victories never felt greater than within these two games. So Halo Reach and Halo 3, with their large-scale battles, are structured extremely similarly, but the emotions present in each are a massive contradiction. In 3, we feel hope. We defeat the Covenant in the Flood. But in Reach, we suffer our greatest losses. Reach is, or I guess I should say was, humanity's second most important planet after Earth. We may have failed there, but the events of Halo 3 showed humanity would not know this world-ending failure again. Humanity would not fall, nor would it concede Earth. Halo Reach felt like it had the most diverse gameplay of any in the franchise, while still matching the shock and awe of Halo 3. 1 minute, we're on foot responding to a disturbance. Then we're participating in a massive assault against the Covenant. Then we're fighting in space piloting sabers. Then we board a Covenant ship. Next we're defending an underground facility. I'm jumping around here, but my point is, within a planetary invasion and in turn an evacuation, there is a lot to do and a lot to experience. So in conclusion, Halo Reach is a game full of anguish. No matter what we accomplish, it is not enough to push back the Covenant. That hopelessness is seen in the slow changing of attitudes throughout the story. We start with, "We will repel the Covenant," slowly turning into, "We must evacuate, for our planet is doomed." The visuals of this dying planet were hauntingly beautiful. They forced you to stop and stare, and reminded you there was no escape from this despair. Alright, next up, Halo 4. Summary. Cortana wakes Chief, and they are then pulled into a Forerunner planet by a gravity well. During the exploration of this planet, there are 2 main discoveries: the existence of a new enemy, the Prometheans, and Cortana's rampancy, a state in which AIs begin to malfunction. Cortana then receives a transmission from the UNSC Infinity, who is trying to respond to her distress call, but ultimately gets caught in the gravity well. While trying to establish communications, Chief and Cortana unknowingly release the Didact, an overwhelmingly powerful Forerunner, who immediately takes control of the nearby Covenant and the Prometheans. The Didact then rushes to attack the Infinity, but is repelled with Chief's assistance. Cortana and Chief wish to pursue the Didact, but Captain Del Rio of the UNSC Infinity orders the destruction of the gravity well in order to retreat. After destroying the gravity well, Chief and Cortana abandon the Infinity, which is now retreating, and unsuccessfully attempt to sabotage the Didact ship. Chief and Cortana quickly follow after the Didact, who is looking for the Composer on a nearby Halo ring. But the Composer has been moved onto a nearby UNSC research station, which he then retrieves and uses on the residents of the station. The Didact then sets his sights on Earth, but with the help of the Infinity, Chief is able to board the Didact ship, destroy the Composer, and defeat the Didact. All at the cost of Cortana. First thing I want to say, I was a little disappointed when the Covenant is the first enemy after waking up. It's not like a huge deal, but after finally defeating the Covenant in Halo 3, it felt as if there was no real progression if I'm just immediately fighting them again. Also, the grunts looked horrible. Alright, let's talk Prometheans, our new enemy. I really enjoy the Prometheans, from the way they look, to the way they fight, to the narrative behind them, pretty much everything. And goddamn do they feel good to shoot. From the dogs that would run at you, to the bigger imposing knights that would teleport, and even spawn healing drones that could revive them. Always prioritize the drones. Also, the Promethean weapons are truly some of my favorite throughout the entire franchise. The pistols, submachine guns, scout and sniper rifle all felt satisfying. The rocket launcher, however, was next level with its secondary explosions. Also, like I said, narratively, they're pretty dope. AI warriors that are made from composing living beings. The existence of the Prometheans stemming from the Forerunner's inability to stop the Flood. The Prometheans were an attempt to create non-biological life forms, ultimately removing the Flood's food source. Let's talk about the Mantis mech. Honestly, one of the best things about this game was the new Mantis mech. It felt so amazing to pilot, and it felt like they included it in just the right amount of missions. Enough to still feel impactful, but not too much to feel overpowered. Defending the research station in the Mantis while shooting down phantoms and banshees was a true highlight of this game. The story. Overall, the story was fine. Honestly, part of me is a little disappointed that we took a closer look into the history of the Forerunners. There's something special about a magical and ancient civilization you never learn anything about. I also find it a bit ridiculous that Captain Del Rio wanted to ignore the threat of the Didact and retreat. How are you going to doubt Chief and Cortana like that? Del Rio and Palmer really disrespected Chief, even if it was minor. This to me is the start of 343 Industries subtly disrespecting Chief, but that's something I'll go into more detail on later. Now, if we look at the final boss fight, I really enjoyed fighting in order to reach the Didact. Starting in a ship, shooting down shields before being able to board and fight through countless Prometheans. However, I didn't love actually fighting and eventually, quote-unquote, killing the Didact. It just didn't feel right and didn't provide a strong impact. The handful of Cortanas rising out of the light bridge just completely killed my vibe. It felt so goofy. I wanted to rewatch the final boss fight in order to really remember how I felt, and seeing it again, I don't think I really appreciated just how much I don't like it. The Didact is an overwhelming entity, and we beat him with some goofy AI shenanigans and running at him with a grenade. We don't even watch the man die, he just falls through the portal. It's just way too anticlimactic of a fight for finishing off a final boss. I definitely assume the Didact will return in some way, shape, or form, since quote-unquote killing him was more like watching him fall into the portal connected to the Composer. Maybe his data is stored within it, or something like that, I don't know. So in conclusion, Halo 4 is the first game developed by 343 Industries instead of Bungie. Overall, they did a decent enough job. While the story left plenty to be desired, and I mean plenty, there were still some new additions, holy hell, that made the game feel exciting, most specifically for me, the Mantis mech and the Prometheans. Once again, let's start with the summary. Halo 5 takes place from the perspective of two squads. First is Fireteam Osiris, and second is Blue Team, led by Chief. While leading Blue Team, Chief receives a message from Cortana, who is presumed dead, to travel to Meridian. Chief reports this information and is told not to follow and to return to the Infinity, but Chief, along with the rest of Blue Team, disobey these orders and follow after Cortana. Blue Team is declared AWOL, and Fireteam Osiris is set to bring them in and follows after them to Meridian. Fireteam Osiris eventually catches up to Blue Team, where Chief bests Locke, the leader of Osiris, in hand-to-hand combat and boards a Guardian with the rest of Blue Team. Guardians are massive Forerunner constructs built as planetary enforcers. Basically, they look like giant mechs, more or less. The Guardian teleports back to the Forerunner planet Genesis, where Cortana is gathering all of the Guardians, and she explains how the Forerunner tech had saved her from her rampancy. Fireteam Osiris then heads to the planet Sanghelios, the homeworld of the Elites and the current location of the Arbiter, in order to board another Guardian and in turn be teleported to Genesis. Once on Genesis, Fireteam Osiris joins forces with Exuberant Witness, the planet's AI caretaker, and together they slowly take back control of the planet. In the meantime, Chief and Blue Team are imprisoned by Cortana so that they cannot interfere with her plan of using the Guardians to enforce a galactic peace. Just before Cortana abandons the planet, Osiris is able to make it to Blue Team and release them from the prison. With her newfound strength, AIs across the galaxy begin to swear fealty to Cortana and her new plan of enforced galactic peace. Cortana, with the Forerunner tech and network, is now undoubtedly an overwhelmingly formidable opponent. I want to start by simply saying I don't think Halo 5 is that bad. Everywhere I look, I see a lot of hate. Yes, I think this game has a ton of issues, and believe me, I'll get into that. However, I think this game's biggest flaw is that it's a Halo game. If you remove the burden of this franchise, I think this game, along with its plot, would be much better received. Obviously, that would take some tweaking, and who really cares about the hypotheticals, because at the end of the day, this is a Halo game. This is a mainline Halo game, and Halo is a massive franchise with high expectations. I truly believe that Halo 5 did some things right. It took some chances, and honestly took some steps in the right direction. However, these steps definitely don't feel fully developed, and while the premise may work, the execution most certainly did not. I love the idea that 343 was trying to expand this universe. 343 added a wide cast of characters, which I truly appreciated, even if it mostly felt half-baked. Let's start with Fireteam Osiris. I have no complaints for not playing as Chief. I loved Reach, I loved ODST, I loved being Arby in Halo 2. That decision was not a mistake in my opinion. However, in the 3 previous games I mentioned, the squad or the character felt justified. Here in Halo 5, I'm not sure why Osiris exists. You wanted to add more characters. Great. But you have to make me care about those characters. Throughout the entire game, I felt no connection whatsoever to Fireteam Osiris or Locke, the leader of Osiris, and the man we played more than Chief. Okay, that's a lie. It was really nice seeing Buck again from ODST, but even that feeling was temporary. Fireteam Osiris just felt like a group of random Spartans thrown together to fulfill this required role for Halo 5. Damn near placeholders. Why not, for example, Palmer? Palmer was present in Halo 4, and even someone took a shot at Chief with the whole "thought you'd be taller" comment. I'm not saying she would love to hunt the Chief. I'm saying it would have been nice to have a focal point to build a new Spartan team around. One familiar face could have changed the whole dynamic. And no, Buck doesn't count here. That's truthfully not my favorite idea for Chief's pursuers. I want to take a look at Blue Team. Towards the end of the game, Cortana says something along the lines of "It's nice to see Blue Team reunited, this legendary team that's completed countless missions together." Cortana here is telling me how impactful Chief being back with Blue Team should be. This is clearly a big deal. However, as someone who played all the games, I have never seen Blue Team. They might have been in a terminal cutscene or two, but come on. On top of that, they have done nothing during Halo 5 to stand out. All they do is tell Chief they have his back and they're on his side. Why on earth would I care? Halo 5, you have to make me care. Here's what I propose. Eliminate Fireteam Osiris. I don't want to even know they exist. Remove Chief from Blue Team. Put him back on his lone wolf grind. When Chief learns Cortana is alive and disobeys orders, send Blue Team after him. The members of Blue Team are supposed to be his closest comrades, from what you are telling me. If you want Chief to show any hesitation, then the people pursuing him must actually hold some importance to him. That's the setup. That gives you a full game to force me to care about Blue Team. Show me flashbacks of Blue Team completing missions alongside Chief. Show me flashbacks of Blue Team becoming Spartans alongside Chief. Make me care. With Blue Team in the main role rather than Locke and Fireteam Osiris, I think the full pursuit and the fact that Chief is the quote-unquote villain would have come across in a much more impactful way. I'm simply trying to provide a solution here rather than just being all negative. Again, I'm very happy that Halo 5 has a wider cast and tries to expand the Halo franchise beyond just more Master Chief. However, this cast is completely underutilized and gives the player zero reason to care about any of them, and in turn just pisses the player off now that they're chasing Master Chief. Also, the Arbiter was in this game. Why? The Arbiter and his civil war against the Covenant on Sang Helios could have been so epic, and honestly, if propositioned properly, I could have seen it being the main focus of damn near a full game. Chief and the Arbiter pushing back the Covenant on Sang Helios to free the elites. Hell, don't even add Chief. I'll just be the Arbiter the whole time. I'll be Arby running around with the incredibly cool Swords of Sang Helios to save my world and save my people. I think this was a greatly misused opportunity of not only a character, but the planet and the story it could tell as a whole. It felt more like they were saying, oh hey look, it's the Arbiter and we're on Sang Helios. Isn't this awesome? Like, yeah, it's fucking cool, but you did nothing with it. So I want to look at the Promethean weapons again, as Halo 5 changed some of them, but most notably I wanted to mention the pistol and the rocket launcher. The pistol is now a 3-round burst, which I really like. And the rocket launcher lost its additional explosions, which bothered me greatly. That was my favorite point in Halo 4. In Halo 5, we are constantly forced to fight the Warden Eternal. For the love of God, stop making me fight the Warden Eternal. It's like fighting Elias in Diablo 4. Dude shows up like 9 times. One boss that just keeps returning without doing anything unique or exceptionally enjoyable just gets so old, even if it makes sense narratively. The Warden Eternal is said to have countless bodies, which is why he continues to show up. I get that. Let's take a little more of a look at the story. So in Halo 5, Master Chief is the bad guy. On top of that, Cortana is actually a bad guy. What happened here? I understand after Halo 4, there weren't a ton of places to go. But turning our beloved duo against us hardly seems like the correct answer. I've already mentioned it, but in terms of boss fights, the fact that we basically only get the Warden Eternal, and it happens repeatedly, is just such a miss. I guess there was the Kraken fight, which is similar to a Scarab, and I did enjoy it, but that's a little different. What about the Guardians? There easily could have been a mission that focused on deactivating or destroying a Guardian, perhaps? We ran away from one as it destroyed a planet, but we never really engaged one. Feels like a bit of a missed opportunity. I'm going to butcher this name, but what about Jul Mdama? He is literally the leader of the current Covenant and considered Hand of the Didact. Why in the hell is he killed off in the opening cutscene? Why didn't you let me fight him? This was something I felt reoccurred constantly, but some of the best moments in this game were just turned into cutscenes. Let me do the cool stuff, please. I don't want to watch Fireteam Osiris flex. Alright, how about the Chief versus Locke fight? That was something. I wouldn't say it super pissed me off, but like, come on. It's the Master Chief, man. Why are you giving Locke a chance? Why is this not a blowout? Alright, in conclusion, as I mentioned, I think Halo 5 takes some steps in the right direction and attempts some new things, even if said things come off half-baked. Overall with the plot, I really feel like they just didn't know what to do after Halo 4. Maybe Halo 4 deserves an equal share of the hate since it pretty much left the franchise nowhere to go, but that hardly seems fair. Quite frankly, I'm not sure why this game wasn't the soft reset of the franchise, and instead 343 waited to do so with Halo Infinite. But back on track with Halo 5. It's like they were trying to breathe some new life into the franchise by diversifying the cast. But why on earth would you sacrifice Chief in the process? As I've mentioned, I don't care that I didn't get to play as Chief the majority of the time. In fact, I recommend you try that again. But you have to make me care. Halo 5's biggest flaw is that it doesn't make me care. And anything I already care about, it tries to destroy or use against me. Halo 5 Guardians is not a horrible game. It's okay. However, it makes some Halo decisions that could easily be seen as blasphemy. Next up, the newest game in the franchise, Halo Infinite. Summary. 6 months after his defeat at the hands of Atriox, the leader of the Banished, Master Chief is pulled out from his aimless drift in space by a UNSC pilot who flies Chief to a severely damaged Zeta Halo. Once arriving on the Halo, Master Chief moves to recover the weapon, an AI that would delete itself after deleting Cortana. However, we learn Cortana has been destroyed, but the weapon remains. Allegedly, Atriox is dead. So the Banished forces are now led by Escharum, who has partnered with the Harbinger, a being of an unknown race. The Harbinger wishes to repair the Halo in order to release the rest of her people, the Endless, who have been imprisoned by the Forerunners, while the Banished simply want a powerful weapon. Master Chief and the weapon set out to halt these repairs while slowly defeating all of the high-ranking Banished, including Escharum. The duo then heads off to defeat the Harbinger, as they were unable to stop all of the repairs. During this journey, the truth of Cortana and the destruction of the ring is revealed. Cortana destroyed the homeworld of the Brutes, and in turn became the prey of Atriox. Cortana held out hope that Chief would come for her, but in the end, in order to prevent Atriox and the Banished from learning too many of the Halo's secrets, she sacrifices herself, dealing major damage to the Halo in the process and also preventing the deletion of the weapon. Chief then makes his way to the Harbinger and is able to defeat her, but not before she's able to send a transmission to an unknown entity. After the credits roll, we once more see Atriox, this time unlocking a sealed door containing the Endless. Let's start by praising Infinite. First of all, without a doubt in my mind, this is the best the franchise has felt to play, for me. The grappling hook, in and of itself, is such a game changer and impacted my perception of this game greatly. I absolutely love a good grappling hook. The grappling hook not only aided in traversal, but it could be used to pick up items, latch onto enemies, or even board vehicles. As soon as I learned I could board vehicles, I was even more hooked than before. Alright. I believe I have the clip, but regardless, let me explain. The first thing I had to try, an absolute necessity. I wanted to jump from one Banshee to another while flying. So, step 1, find a Banshee, then fly around until you find a hostile Banshee, get close, jump out, and pray you land your hook. Board the enemy vehicle, eject the pilot, and watch them fall to their death. Once again, easily best feeling Halo, although I highly expect that is grappling hook bias. Let's look at the Banished. This will be a bit of a mixed bag. I really enjoyed the Banished. However, at the end of the day, I would totally understand the argument that the Banished is just a reskin of the Covenant in terms of gameplay. It is basically made up of former Covenant members after all. The Banished was formed when Atriox, the guy that beat Chief's ass, rebelled against the Covenant after countless brutes had basically been sacrificed as cannon fodder. He was the first to rebel against the Covenant and live. The Banished are basically a mercenary group led by Atriox, comprised of ex-Covenant members, other hired mercenaries, and while I don't believe it's seen in the game, even humans. But gameplay-wise, think Covenant but red. Maybe a little more aggressive. The Hunters definitely felt more aggressive, especially when you kill one of the pair. The other will rage and sprint at you, which I felt really only happened in this game, or at least was way more impactful in this game. The Hunters also just look a lot cooler in red, in my opinion. I'm not sure why. It just hit harder. Atriox seems very interesting to me. Strong, strategic, all around badass. I'll talk about him a bit more when we get to Halo Wars 2. I was really disappointed in Infinite, however, because they start by showing Atriox defeating Chief, which so clearly establishes his dominance, but then they immediately, quote-unquote, kill him off as soon as Chief is revived and the game truly begins. This is just downright horrible, in my opinion. You cannot create a big bad, have him defeat Chief, which I might add does not happen, and then remove him from the game. Fuck you and fuck off. Hopefully, whenever the next game comes out, if ever, 343 Industries is able to give Atriox his chance to shine. Continuing with this point, not only is the new big bad dead, but Cortana, the big bad from 5, is also dead at the start of the game. Talk about a franchise reset. We go from Halo 5 and watching Cortana accumulate unprecedented amounts of power to a fucking off-screen death? You've got to be kidding me. Did I like Cortana as the big bad? No. Does that mean I think we should pretend it never happened? Absolutely not. And to add insult to injury, her death is a self-sacrifice. It's her way of making things right in the end. What the fuck was the point of Halo 5 then? Sure, Cortana as the big bad sucked, but at least have the decency to resist the urge of a damn redemption arc. Let's talk about that open world. Does Halo Infinite create a compelling open world environment? Sure. Yeah. I'm not going to pretend to have a strong opinion about it one way or another. The thing with open worlds is that they seem to always impact mission structure and presentation. While in previous Halo games you run through a level, get a loading screen, and start the next, here you're given the pretty standard map markers spread throughout the map, which can be rather annoying depending on the distance. On top of that, with an open world, there's always the need to make it feel somewhat alive and keep the player busy with plenty of activities. Again, on this point, I don't really have a stance I feel strongly about. There are strongholds to conquer, marines to save, open world bosses to hunt, etc., etc. The open world does its job, in my opinion. However, ultimately, I think the open world structure of Halo Infinite is a net negative. Whether it is because of this open world structure or not, the mission structure as a whole felt like it took a major hit. The large-scale set pieces we're used to experiencing feel like they are nowhere to be found, instead replaced by these mini bosses that feel very, I'm going to say, gamified, based on the fact that they have health bars, which I don't recall ever seeing before. Or just combat sections that struggle to ever feel as impactful as the previously mentioned set pieces. All of the missions more or less felt the same, and I'd argue it lacked the diversity of all previous titles. Even Halo 5 felt more like a structured Halo experience, and arguably more true to the identity that is Halo, simply discussing mission structure. So, Halo Infinite is in this weird spot for me where it has the best feeling gameplay, but the worst missions to experience it in. I've already given my opinion on the handling of Atriox and Cortana and how I view it as a major fumble, but let's look at some other aspects of the story. Let's look at Chief's company throughout this game. Chief is primarily accompanied by the weapon and the pilot. The weapon annoyed me pretty much the whole game. The pilot wasn't much better. However, they are both somewhat used effectively in giving us a deeper look into the Chief's psyche in some important moments. Mainly, there's a point in the story where the pilot begins to open up to Chief, and the Master Chief gives a slight indication of his regret for failing to be there for Cortana and failing to save her. There aren't a ton of these moments, but there are some small scenes like this throughout where I appreciate seeing some more perspectives and emotions of the Master Chief. Let's talk about the Endless. The Endless are basically the biggest question mark of this whole game. Who are the Endless? What are the Endless? The Endless are an alien race known as the Zalanin. I'm sure that's wrong, but I tried. I've actually watched some lore vids on YouTube because I was hoping to learn a little more. I didn't want to go too deep though. So throughout the game, we hear how the Endless pose an even greater threat than the Flood. The Endless actually survived the firing of the Halos and were discovered soon after by the Forerunners and then imprisoned. That's my understanding of it, at least. The Endless were basically irrelevant in this game, however. So hopefully they can be fully utilized in the next Halo campaign if that ever happens. We do see Atriox discovering the Endless at the end of the game, so I would definitely be interested to learn more about this new species and see a potential alliance with Atriox and the Banished. There's a few random quotes, all of which I believe came from grunts, that I'd like to mention. You brought a gun to a bigger gunfight. You know, the last time I drove a vehicle, I looked stupid too. Hope you got your unmarked grave picked out. These are just a few examples of a point I want to make. The grunts' random comments felt better than ever. I'm all for making your enemies feel more and more impactful. And of course, the grunts have always been funny in my opinion, so I can only see expanding their repertoire as a good thing. And of course, their delivery of these lines hits way harder than anything I could ever produce. Let's move on to our conclusion. So in terms of the story, we've got some new elements such as the Banished and the Endless, but we also basically abandoned anything that happened in Halo 5. Cortana, the big bad of Halo 5, is given an off-screen death, a complete throwaway. What does this mean for the rest of the AI who had sworn their loyalty to her? What does this mean for the Guardians? None of this was explored in the slightest. The grappling hook was a fantastic addition to the series with all it allows a player to do. But the open world structure, while solidly constructed, does not feel like it's worth the loss of genuinely impactful story missions. Halo Infinite is arguably the best feeling game of the franchise, but the more I look back on the story, the more it feels like a complete and utter mess. I look forward to the next game, simply because I feel like Infinite has at least set up the franchise to progress in a positive direction. Perhaps that was the goal. Perhaps 343 just wanted to bury the memory of Halo 5, introduce some new key elements, and position the franchise to make a grand return to the spotlight in the future. Next up, we're going to take a look at Halo Wars 1 and 2 together. First and foremost, the Halo Wars games are RTS, or real-time strategy. These are not typically games that I play, So in terms of the quality of an actual RTS game, I have nothing to say and I have no comparisons to make. Perhaps one day I will commit to the genre and learn more. Overall, I enjoyed seeing large-scale armies engage in battle and seeing particular units, infantry, or vehicles that I hadn't seen yet otherwise. More so, these games made me care about Spartan Team Red, consisting of Jerome, Alice, and Douglas. Even presented in a less personal format, these games were able to force me to care about Red Team much more than Halo 5 ever could with Fireteam Osiris and Blue Team. Let's start with the story of Halo Wars. The Spirit of Fire is sent to investigate Covenant activity on the planet Harvest and learn that the Covenant has discovered a Forerunner facility under the command of the Arbiter, a different Arbiter from the mainline games, as this was the beginning of the war. The facility is proven to be a map to Arcadia, where the Covenant have already begun slaughtering humans and secretly assembling a Scarab. The UNSC forces arrive and are able to destroy the Scarab, but the Arbiter kidnaps Professor Ellen Anders, a scientist aboard the Spirit of Fire, who has been researching the Forerunners, and heads to an uncharted planet infested by the Flood. The UNSC follows in hot pursuit and soon discover the planet is actually a Forerunner installation containing a dormant fleet of highly advanced Forerunner starships to which the Covenant intend to obtain. In order to destroy the installation and the ships within, the UNSC Spirit of Fire sacrifices its slipspace drive to destroy the installation's core, a miniature sun, and cause a supernova. Before the device can be placed, the Arbiter and his elites attack the drive's location, but are defeated by the Spartans and Sergeant John Forge. He then must stay behind to manually detonate the damaged reactor. The Spirit of Fire escapes as Forge detonates the impromptu explosion, destroying the Forerunner installation and fleet. Halo Wars genuinely felt like a nice little introduction into the RTS genre. The missions never really bothered me, and the whole process felt really nice and smooth. The introduction of the Flood in this game was actually pretty horrifying as well. The way we watch the Flood slowly wipe out other units not under our control before we slowly creep around the map looking for answers. Halo Wars takes place in 2531, which is long before the fall of Reach or Halo Combat Evolved. Let's look at the Halo Wars 2 story. So the Spirit of Fire somehow ends up on the Ark after 20-some years after entering cryosleep at the end of the first game. Spartans Jerome, Alice, and Douglas are immediately dispatched to respond to a distress signal where they find Isabel, an AI from a UNSC base, and shortly after run into my man Atriox, who proceeds to more or less win a 3v1. The Spartans then proceed to extract while being chased by other members of the Banished. The UNSC set up a forward operating base on the Ark to begin their attack. They soon learn of and then secure the Cartographer, a map of key systems and weapons while being attacked by Sentinels. Anders learns that Atriox has hijacked the teleportation network of the Ark, so the UNSC forces defeat Decimus, Atriox's right-hand man, and disable the portal network. Then Jerome, aided by Isabel, hijacks an attacking Banished carrier and prompts the Sentinels to destroy it, protecting the Spirit of Fire from its attack. Anders then suggests they should create a new Halo in order to transport forces back into UNSC-controlled space, which is then heavily contested by the Banished, requiring some stellar defenses. Anders is then led to the control room of the Halo, where she's able to control specific land masses and throws the Banished sector into space, killing them all. The UNSC troops return to the Spirit of Fire, but Anders cannot stop the Halo's countdown and jumps into slipspace. After the credits, Anders is then pulled out of slipspace early and comes face to face with a Guardian. Halo Wars 2 does a really good job of making me care about Atriox, and like I mentioned before, Spartan Red Team, Specifically, I'd say Jerome. Atriox starting the game by saucing 3 Spartans and proceeding to say, "Run, little demons," will forever live rent-free in my head. The mission structure here starts to fall apart a bit, in my opinion, though. It became really boring, with most of the missions revolving around sitting and waiting for way too long. Perhaps that's my own fault for playing on easy, but I know better than to challenge a genre I'm helpless in. Maybe on higher difficulties, there's more enemies and the moment-to-moment can feel more engaging, but I can't say for certain. A true highlight of this game was once again seeing the large-scale armies and cutscenes and just feeling that shock and awe. I like the story and I like seeing Atriox. I want to talk about Awakening the Nightmare. Awakening the Nightmare is a DLC for Halo Wars 2 all about the Flood. I did not play this, but I was interested enough in the story and everything that I went and watched the cutscenes on YouTube. Atriox sends 2 of his men to gather supplies around High Charity, which crash landed on the Ark back in Halo 3. But very clearly tells them, do not enter High Charity no matter what. Of course, one of his men disobeys and breaks straight into High Charity, and the Flood is set loose on the Ark. A few specific remarks about it. The ending cutscenes within this DLC looked amazing with some battle scenes, and they even added some Flood that have like tentacles that they were using like grappling hooks, which was a true highlight. Basically felt like an elite unit of the Flood. Atriox was pissed, and it was cool to see just how seriously he takes the threat of the Flood. There's a moment in the cutscene where one of the tiny Flood forms leaps at Atriox from his blind spot, and he does the classic no-look catch and like smashes it in the hand. It had me hype for sure. Halo Wars 2 just really reinforced how disappointed I was with Atriox's exclusion from Infinite, and just how badly I want to see him shine in the next Halo campaign. Every little moment of Atriox that we've been given here or in Infinite has just been next level, in my opinion. At least setting the groundwork for something special. In conclusion, the Halo Wars game surprisingly ended up providing a very impactful experience. I did not doubt the quality of the games, but once again the genre is not up my alley, so I expected to fall off rather quickly. The stories provided within these 2 games may not have been the biggest and best, but they are solid throughout. Halo Wars 2 definitely a bit more out there, if you know what I mean. They somehow end up on the Ark, and this overwhelming force of Banish is fought on even ground by a small force, a singular ship of UNSC. It's a bit far-fetched, but not the end of the world. I enjoyed seeing these large-scale armies, whether in cutscenes or during gameplay. I enjoyed seeing units I hadn't seen in mainline games, whether they were infantry, such as snipers, or flamethrower units, or vehicles such as Grizzlies. However, I think easily the best part of these spin-offs was obtaining a deeper connection with characters other than just Master Chief. Atriox becoming the respectable villain, while Red Team provides a new trio of Spartans I wish to learn more about and keep an eye on. Especially Jerome. Finally, we are ready to talk Halo Spartan Strike and Halo Spartan Assault, the last games that I played, and the last games of the franchise. We're going to keep this extremely brief. Spartan Strike and Spartan Assault are top-down twin-stick shooters, very short in length. Both games have a unique way of framing their stories. They are told to military trainees as a sort of battle simulation. Cool, but not that cool. Halo Spartan Assault is told through the eyes of Spartans Palmer and Davis. Basically, the 2 Spartans have to defend against a Covenant invasion. I like seeing Palmer actually in action, as opposed to how she is in 4 and 5 doing nothing. It feels like they've been trying to tell me how badass she is without actually having her do anything, so it's nice to play as her in this game and do some serious damage. And it's another decent enough Covenant UNSC battle story to keep me interested. Spartan Strike, however, I did not even complete. This game has the same structure, but the story I barely even remember. Something about some Forerunner artifact, blah blah blah. I got really frustrated because in both games, death means restarting the whole level, and some of these levels were excruciatingly slow and boring. Also, more so in Spartan Strike, there was constantly an objective which required standing in one spot to allow whatever to charge up, and you basically just sit there and get shot. I've always hated that type of objective in games. I died from being forced to stand still, and ultimately said, fuck it. So these games I clearly don't have a lot to say about. They were barely enjoyable, and quite frankly, if you want the full Halo experience, you could still easily skip these. While I won't say they added nothing, they did provide some UNSC, Covenant, cutscene, battle story, whatever. They are definitely a far cry from any other games in this franchise, and I will most likely continue to eliminate them from my memory. Now that we've discussed each game individually, I now want to discuss some additional general thoughts. This will be brief, but these are still things that I feel are important to mention. Number 1, I want to say I fell in love with Halo for the story, the lore, and the world building. I do not continue to play this game because of the combat. This is just important to mention because I think it helps show where my priorities lie. Number 2, personally, I'm not the biggest fan of vehicular combat. I wouldn't say it's bad, but these moments in any game are not typically my favorites. This is not a Halo specific issue, nor is it really an issue at all. As I progressed through the franchise, the whole vehicle combat definitely grew on me. I may have started not really feeling it, but by the end of the franchise, I was no longer complaining. Number 3, the Flood. I have definitely already mentioned this, but I think narratively the Flood is incredible. I love their horrific nature. However, sometimes fighting against the Flood just didn't feel very satisfying. Number 4, Akimbo, or dual wielding, whatever you want to call it. This is something I completely forgot to mention earlier on. I believe it was first introduced in Halo 2 and then refined in Halo 3 before being removed from subsequent entries in the franchise. There's always something so pleasurable about doubling up on firepower. In fact, it was quite the disappointment that this feature was removed. I don't think it was ever overpowered, so removing it just feels like a loss all around. Number 5, I think, and this is a very cold take, that Bungie did a much better job than 343 Industries with this franchise. Hopefully, 343 can get this all figured out. I think the people are losing patience, and quite frankly, Xbox has so many other studios now, and I would love for any of them to get a swing at the Halo IP, whether it's a mainline game or otherwise. Number 6, I'm going to call this a conspiracy theory, but I have this sneaking suspicion that 343 either doesn't like Master Chief or they have no idea how to build on his character. I think the former would be much funnier, so that's sort of my fake headcanon. 343 does not like Chief, and here's why. Every game they've made has in some way, shape, or form disrespected Chief. In Halo 4, there's just a few snide comments, nothing major. In Halo 5, Chief is literally hunted. I think that speaks for itself. And in Halo Infinite, the game starts with Chief getting his ass beat. Also, I believe they were involved in the atrocity that is, or I guess I should say was, the Halo TV series. This is mostly me just trolling, but I think it's funny to point out. Number 7, the last thing I want to discuss is more of a random thought more than anything. I think one thing that is a bit of a missed opportunity is the automatic hacking. Instead of Chief walking up to a terminal and plugging in Cortana, who then automatically hacks in, imagine maybe hacking minigames that you had to actually solve in order to unlock terminals and doors, etc., etc. Imagine playing as Cortana or some other AI in order to do so. That's the puzzle guy inside me talking, but I'm not really sure that type of gameplay would fit in a Halo game, at least in a mainline Halo game. Perhaps this idea could work as a spin-off game. Cortana AI hacking puzzles. I don't know. Perhaps a new 2-player co-op game, where one person is a Spartan or ODST or whatever, and it plays like an FPS, and the other plays as their companion AI, having to hack into whatever and solve puzzles to assist on the missions. It would be in a similar structure to It Takes Two or Operation Tango, where the 2 players must work together. Again, I don't really know, just some random thoughts that occurred to me, and this is the place to let them out. There are 3 non-gaming Halo pieces of media I want to discuss here. Number 1, Red vs. Blue. I originally watched Red vs. Blue back in high school on Netflix when I knew nothing about Halo. I don't really remember how far I got or what I might have learned. All I really remember is laughing my ass off. So, recently, I decided to rewatch just a little bit of Red vs. Blue. It's no longer on Netflix from what I could find, but I found it for free on Tubi, but the episode structure is way different. Anyways, I just wanted to bring this up because it's a nice parody of Halo. I probably watched less than 10 episodes, but it was interesting watching it with Halo knowledge, and them making fun of the Warthog naming and whatever other systems present. Definitely worth a watch. Number 2, the Halo TV series on Paramount. I only made it through 2 or 3 episodes before I couldn't take it anymore. There's plenty of hate going around, and I'm sure plenty of deep dives and whatever else, so I don't feel the need to dogpile on. I actually liked some of the action, but very quickly I realized that was the only thing going for it. Number 3, Halo, The Fall of Reach. This movie basically went over the formation of the Spartan 2s, more specifically, a look into Chief's background. This is something I've been interested in, and getting a peek into it through this movie was extremely gratifying. In fact, I'm not so sure why a lot of this couldn't be used in the games to show more emotion. More specifically, I want to bring up Halo 5 yet again. Going off of my suggestion to use Blue Team as Chief's pursuers, this movie could basically have been used as flashbacks throughout the whole game to make me care about the other Spartans, watching them grow up together, go through surgery together, complete missions, etc., etc. Obviously, it wouldn't be a perfect one-to-one, but I think it could have been incredibly impactful. Focusing back on the movie, I was enamored watching Chief become who he is today. We really watched as he basically won over everyone in his vicinity. More Halo like this, please. Alright, now that I've discussed each game to varying degrees, and whatever else, it's finally time. I'll give you my Halo game rankings. Number 12, Halo Spartan Strike. As the only game in the franchise I did not finish, I think it's pretty clear why this is at the bottom. Number 11, Halo Spartan Assault. The twin stick shooter I actually did finish. Really not a lot to praise here, and more or less a forgettable experience. Number 10, Halo 5 Guardians. I believe that I wrote more for Halo 5 than any other game. This game's biggest sin is being a Halo title, as overall it's truly not that bad of a game. It took some steps in the correct direction, but ultimately failed to create an impactful experience. Number 9. Halo 4. Halo 4 is by no means a bad game, but overall it didn't do a lot for me. While the Prometheans were cool, I'm still not super happy about getting a deeper dive into the Forerunners when I think I would have preferred they just stayed more of a mystery. Also, Cortana and Chief versus the Didact was quite the letdown. Number 8. Halo Wars 2. While Halo Wars 2 was able to showcase some characters in a very impactful way, overall the mission structure let the game down. There were simply too many missions that took too much time. I was genuinely getting very bored. Number 7. Halo Combat Evolved. Quite frankly, the only reason this game is so low is because of that final mission. I was never more frustrated playing through this entire franchise than I was during that mission. Except, arguably, with Spartan Strike and Spartan Assault, but that's kind of a completely different ballgame. That mission makes an overall great game worse. Number 6. Halo Infinite. My stance on Infinite actually feels like it's changed a lot since I've written my review and forced myself to think about it more. I really did not like most of what they did in the plot, and it honestly even makes Halo 5 a worse game. Without the stellar feeling gameplay, and of course my beloved grappling hook, I fear for where this game would have fallen on my list. Number 5. Halo Wars. This is quite the sleeper pick for me here. Halo Wars was a nice introduction into the RTS genre, and overall felt like a really complete package. Playing through this game just felt smooth the whole time. Even if Halo Wars 2 felt stronger on the character side of things, all of that development for the UNSC started here. Number 4. Halo 3 ODST. I will never forget the bone-chilling vibes of the overrun city late at night as I crept through the streets, trying my best to remain undetected. Number 3. Halo 3. How fitting. Holy mother of set pieces. From defending Earth from scarabs to assaulting the Ark to retrieving Cortana from a flood-infested High Charity, Halo 3 missions just hit and hit and hit and hit. Number 2. Halo Reach. The overwhelming feeling of despair. Not only because we already know that the planet is doomed, but because no matter what successes we had in this planetary defense, the Covenant had an answer. I can't deny how mesmerized I was by this dying planet and our desperate attempts to salvage what we could. Number 1. My favorite game in the Halo franchise, Halo 2. The crumbling of the Covenant. The Covenant falling apart and ending in a bloodbath between former allies will forever be soaked into my mind. The story presentation elevated this title to what I believe is the pinnacle of this franchise. Alright, my friend. You now have my ranking and my thoughts about the entirety of the Halo franchise. Overall, I would absolutely recommend anyone to play through these games. Thank you for finally convincing me to give Halo a chance. It's always been something I wanted to experience, but I continually blew it off. Now, I can truthfully call myself a Halo fan, look forward to the next game, and jump on the bandwagon of Master Chief for Smash Bros. Thank you for watching my Halo franchise review, the first of my judgments for Jace.